Welcome all to the Sephirah Center of Shamanism. My name is Luke, experienced practitioner and mentor of the shamanic and occult sciences. It's my honor to welcome you to my channel, where we break down the ancient shamanic and occult sciences, bringing them into balance with the deep psyche. Before I start this topic, check out my membership programs in the first and second links of the description of this video. First link for the Patreon, second link for the premium membership service, which will give you direct access to me, as well as advanced occult initiatory systems and practices. As I said, links are in the description. So today's topic is a juicy one, and that is the Necronomicon current. We're going to be delving into the famous Forbidden Book of the Dead. We're going to be uncovering what it actually is, understanding it from a mythological standpoint, and how this mythological story or set of stories acts as a powerful gateway to the deepest corners of the psyche. We're going to be approaching the Necronomicon current from an occult initiatory standpoint, how you can use it to open various gateways within your psyche, and more than anything, how we can interact with the ancient ones, the great old ones, and other powerful archetypal energies to access the deepest, most repressed portions of our psyche and tap into the power and pure potential that exists within it. Fascinating subject, ideal for those who are wanting to delve into some of the deepest corners of occult initiation. The Necronomicon current definitely makes up arguably the most powerful current of energy within the darker aspects of the occult. Definitely comparable to the Clifothic initiation in terms of its intensity and power. So if this is something that interests you, definitely stay tuned. So the Necronomicon is a fascinating concept that has captivated the attention of many seekers of the occult and of just horror fiction. There are many different ways that you can view the Necronomicon. It is a very controversial subject. There are many people who just see it as a set of horror fiction stories, extremely well written horror fiction stories. And there are some that actually approach it as a fully developed occult initiatory system that you can use to tap into the deeper gateways within the cosmos and your deep psyche to explore the hidden potential that dwells within both your psyche and the cosmos. So you can view the Necronomicon as purely fiction or as a literal gateway into some of the deepest corners of your psyche. What many people have found, though, is that when they start to interact with the stories that were developed by the famous horror fiction writer H.P. Lovecraft, who actually created the Necronomicon universe, or should I say channeled the Necronomicon universe, many people found that just by reading the stories, they were opening themselves up to a specific current of energy that would then start to work with them or through them. This would highly depend, I feel, on one's openness and whether one's soul is ready for such an endeavor to actually start communicating with some of the primordial beings that are described within the Necronomicon universe. Okay, so the Necronomicon is seen by many as a literal book, but such a book in terms of its original text has never actually been found, and there's no proof that such a book actually existed. So it's very likely, I'm not saying it's for sure, but it's very likely that the Necronomicon universe was simply channeled by the author H.P. Lovecraft. H.P. Lovecraft was known to be somebody who was quite introverted, somebody who was quite, if you refer to societal expectations and constructs, somebody who was quite sort of dissociated, quite sort of, you could even say, mentally ill. But one thing is for sure, that he was a seasoned traveler of the different realms of the astral plane and various star gateways, both within the dream state and within general unconscious traveling through the imaginal realms. Okay, so H.P. Lovecraft did channel the Necronomicon system and a whole set of stories that relate to the concept of the primordial beings that existed before mankind and that are waiting to rule the earth once more. Okay, so all of this is symbolic if we approach it from an occult initiatory standpoint. Okay, if we look at the concept of these primordial beings that existed before mankind, you can really draw very strong symbolism and correlation to the deeper hidden aspects of the psyche and some of the most rejected aspects of the human psyche that are then hidden within this internal structure that can be classed as the Necronomicon. Okay, so the original Necronomicon book was said to have been written by a man who goes by the name of Abdul al-Hazred, and he was nicknamed the Mad Arab. But similar to the actual Necronomicon text or the official Necronomicon text, there is no proof that such a man actually existed. So as he said, the system has been channeled by H.P. Lovecraft himself. Okay, so when you look at the Necronomicon, you are looking at it from one of two perspectives. Either the purely horror fiction perspective, which if you go on Reddit or look up the Necronomicon, then you will find mostly things relating to the Necronomicon being a fictional story. But if you approach it from an occult standpoint, you find many different methods that you can utilize to tap into the primordial beings and into your primordial self and start a process of deep primal shadow integration and self-development. So it started as a horror fiction, but has later been seen as a fully blown or fully developed occult initiatory system that can be tapped into in many different ways. Okay, there's from H.P. Lovecraft and his stories, there have also been many Necronomicon grimoires, okay, magical workbooks and path workings that have been created, many of which do claim to be the official Necronomicon. But as I said, there is technically no official Necronomicon. Okay, the Necronomicon can be seen as anything that helps you access the deeper recesses of your deep psyche and deep unconscious. So the Necronomicon can be seen as a gateway, and regardless of what grimoire you look at, I've got many sort of grimoires relating to the Necronomicon. The most famous one I've got up here, which is the Simon Necronomicon. This actually introduces many sort of workings and a full initiatory system through the 7 star gates, each relating to a planetary sphere. Okay, and the first point in the book is there are primeval forces that, or well, the first thing that it says here is Cthulhu calls. Okay, there are primeval forces that were worshipped and summoned long before the creation of the Kabbalah. They are the ancient ones of the Sumerian faith, and they live on in the magic of Aleister Crowley and the mythos of H.P. Lovecraft. They wait beyond the gate, ready to rule the earth once again. This long-lost Sorcerer's Handbook contains incantations and conjurations, exorcisms and bindings, but they are not to be used lightly. We can only guess what horrible fate prevented Abdul al-Hazred from completing this book of the Black Earth. And remember, there are no effective banishings for the forces invoked in the Necronomicon. Okay, so just reading that, you understand that this is a very serious initiatory path and approach to occult-related self-development if you follow the Simon Necronomicon. Okay, there are a few other examples. If you're looking for path workings, then this one is amazing. Okay, the gates of the Necronomicon. Okay, the gates, or the 13 gates of the Necronomicon, a workbook of magic by Donald Tyson. This introduces a different gate walking system that refers to the 13, not 12. It also includes the supposed hidden zodiac sign known as Ophiuchus. So what it is really referring to in this book are gateways, astral gateways that are opened when the sun moves into a particular zodiac sign. Okay, so the workings can only be opened like once a year, and the idea is that you then spend just over a month within the energies of that given sort of zodiac sign or within that gateway before moving on to the next. So that makes up a full sort of over a year long occult initiatory system. Okay, there's also, this version of the Necronomicon, also by Donald Tyson, the Necronomicon, The Wanderings of Alhazred. Okay, this for me is the most understandable version of the Necronomicon that I have personally found. Okay, there's a few by an author called Joshua Free as well, which I recommend checking out. But this one, Necronomicon, The Wanderings of Alhazred by Donald Tyson, does really break down the Necronomicon in a really helpful way. But again, it references a lot of Abdul Alhazred. It references him a lot. But again, we don't know whether he actually existed or not. Okay, so basically, there are many different Necronomicons that you can look into. There are many different grimoires or Necronomicon related grimoires that you can check out and sort of practice the workings within, but you are working with some of the deeper, more primordial forces of your deep unconscious. And some of these are, I would say, they are older than some of the, say, regular infernal spirits that are more well known within the dark occult community, such as Beelzebub, the Goetia. I feel that here we are working with forces that actually predate them and are so chaotic in nature that they can't really be fully comprehended by the human mind. Okay, so this is very, very serious stuff. Okay, this is very deep occult initiation, particularly if you are exploring the Simon Necronomicon and the 13 gates of the Necronomicon. We are really tapping into some very deep corners within our psyche if we start to explore these different initiatory systems. But the Necronomicon can be seen pretty much as anything that unlocks you could call it the inner city or the nameless city. Yeah, and that is anything relating to the deep unconscious. So for that reason, technically, other initiatory systems that are focused on exploration of the deep psyche, such as the medicine wheel or the dark Kabbalah, the Cliffothic realms, can easily be seen as, or could easily fall under, a version of the Necronomicon, because you are exploring a hidden structure that is symbolic of the hidden corners of your psyche. Okay, so for clarity, I'm going to read a snippet from the 13 Gates of the Necronomicon by Donald Tyson. The Necronomicon. Lovecraft's universe is epitomized in his greatest creation, the dreaded Necronomicon, a book of the dead that the modern world refuses to let die. The Necronomicon is the beating heart of the mythos, and to study the book is to study the mythos. The Necronomicon is neither wholly fiction nor wholly real, but an uncanny merging of truth and fantasy that is almost impossible for the mind to capture or express, since the boundaries that define it continue to evolve. No one can say exactly what the Necronomicon contains. It is a history of the ages on Earth before the rise of mankind. It is the xenobiology of alien races from beyond the stars. It is a textbook of arcane chemistry. It is a grimoire of the necromantic arts. It is poetry. It is philosophy. It is the blasphemous Bible of Lovecraft's demon-haunted world. So as I said, it's important to understand that the Necronomicon is not just one thing. Okay, you can view it in many, many different ways, but what it is really focused towards, specifically speaking, realistically, what it says here, okay, xenobiology of alien races from beyond the stars. So what that really refers to specifically is, a gateway to the alien races, a gateway to the ET intelligences that we also hold within our own DNA. Okay. It's a textbook of arcane chemistry, a grimoire of necromantic arts. So very much focused towards a lot of what the darker aspects of the occult is about, which is the embracing of death energy, the merging with death energy and treating it as an ally. So interacting with the Necronomicon currents will result in significant dissolving of the older aspects of the self that are no longer serving, and it is an exploration into the deepest recesses of your own mind and nervous system, okay, using the archetypes that are representative of the ancient alien races. Okay, it is poetry, it is philosophy, it is the blasphemous Bible of Lovecraft's demon-haunted world, which means that you can see it in many different ways, okay? It's poetry, it's philosophy, which basically means that you can use its mythological energy and approach that is brought by the poetry that is held within some of the pages of the books or the different aspects of the Necronomicon to access some deeper gateways that exist within yourself. Okay, all of these are mythological interpretations of things that are already existing within your own mind. What is true of the Necronomicon is equally true of the old ones, the race of gods from alien stars that ruled this planet for eons before human beings stood erect and learned to fear them. The old ones are dismissed by cynics as no more than a fantasy of Lovecraft's, yet they continue to resonate with undiminished power in the human psyche more than 7 decades after the death of their creator. Did Lovecraft really create the old ones, or did he merely glimpse them moving through the terrifying caverns and see depths of his nightmares? Was the Necronomicon a fantasy or the echo of a book that stands on the shelves of libraries not of this world? There are many who believe that Lovecraft was a sleeping prophet who traveled between dimensions and across the gulfs of space and time in his dreams. Lovecraft himself mentions in numerous letters that he drew upon his dreams for the subjects of his stories. The very name Necronomicon was not invented by Lovecraft, but was heard by him in a dream. Its philological structure has defied analysis, leading to dozens of different interpretations, but it carries an undeniable resonance in the mind, as do many topics of Lovecraft stories. It may be that Lovecraft's lost cities and alien worlds exist, as does the Necronomicon itself, slightly out of phase with our mundane reality, yet accessible by sensitive minds in dreams, where the boundaries between dimensions are crossed. For Lovecraft, dreams were more real than reality. He wrote himself into several of his stories in the character of Randolph Carter, an explorer of dreams who possessed the ability to remain self-aware and travel where he desired. There seems little doubt that Lovecraft was engaged in unconscious astral projection and that many of his vivid dreams represented travel across the astral planes. The Necronomicon has astral reality, so do the old ones and their horrifying broods and servants, and the other races that ruled the earth in its infancy. Whether Lovecraft perceived an existing reality and recorded it in his stories, or whether the power of his stories resonating in millions of human minds created the astral reality is a chicken and egg puzzle that may never be solved. I suspect it is both, that the old ones and the Necronomicon existed in some form on the astral level before Lovecraft wrote them down, but that by capturing the popular imaginations of millions, Lovecraft was able to bring them more firmly into our local astral environment where they presently subsist, so close to our physical reality that it is almost possible to reach out and touch them. So basically what that is saying is that the Necronomicon is as real as you make it, and that it is an astral structure that is being brought closer to the physical plane of existence through the mere knowledge of it alone. Okay, mainly spread through the popularity of H.P. Lovecraft stories. Okay, the Necronomicon is becoming more and more real the more people become aware of it. Okay, so even me talking about it here and now, and some of the viewers who may be watching this who had never even heard of the Necronomicon before, you're becoming aware of this concept, aware of these stories, and aware of what it's all about. That is being planted into your deep psyche, and that is going to contribute to bringing the awareness of such a concept closer to the physical plane of existence, as well as the symbolism that the Necronomicon represents, which is the deepest portions of the psyche. Okay, so even just spreading this information into the collective is going to move the collective consciousness closer to the shadow realms, okay, closer to the realms of pure potential that exist both on the macrocosmic level and the microcosmic level, so that we can start to reshape the holographic reality that we are dwelling within. Okay, so the Necronomicon is as real as you make it. Okay, and it really depends on your own beliefs of it. You know, somebody could explore the Necronomicon stories and very much see them as just stories, you know, and that's fine, and that is what they will be. Okay, but there's a reason why occultists have started to actually create solid initiatory systems that are based off of H.P. Lovecraft's mythos, because it has been opening gateways. Just reading the story and understanding the concept has been opening gateways within the psyches of those who are ready to look within themselves and have created solid initiatory systems for actually entering certain planes and communicating with the literal archetypal forces that are representative of or represented by H.P. Lovecraft stories. Okay, it's very similar to the concept of a magical servitor found in chaos magic. A servitor being a thought form that is created to carry out a specific task. Okay, also very similar to tulpomancy. A tulpa is like a thought form, but more similar to the concept of an imaginary friend. The process of actually creating a sentient being based off of the belief of its existence alone in that regard. So the Necronomicon and the understanding of the concept on the collective level is creating a more solid astral structure that is becoming more and more accessible to those who are ready to look there. Okay, and the Necronomicon is very much symbolic of the pure potential, okay, interaction with the primordial intelligences that dwell outside of our multiverse entirely and existed long before it, but because all is within, it very much represents the exploration and merging with your own primordial self and the acceptance of your own godhood. So very much aligned to the left-hand path, occult explorations and initiatory systems, because the purpose of it is to merge with your own godhood. So this is why the Qliphothic initiation could very easily be seen as a Necronomicon-based exploration. Even though it doesn't work with the same pantheon of beings, it's still exploring what is hidden and exploring a symbolic astral structure that is accessing different portions within your own deep psyche so that you can tap into the power centers and the pure potential that has been repressed within it. Okay, so the Necronomicon is basically a way of giving form to something that cannot be defined by form. Okay, because we are exploring realms of the hidden, of the dark matter, of the primordial realms that actually encase and hold the architectural drawings for our physical, tangible experience. It is a way of accessing this plane, tapping into its power so that you can begin to reshape the multiverse that you are dwelling in and making it in order to make it a more conducive technology that supports the evolution of your soul instead of distancing you from your soul. Okay, so the purpose of all occult initiation is, from the perspective of the left-hand path, exploring the darker aspects of yourself and the darker aspects of the cosmos. The purpose of it is to merge, create a merging with those realms, create a merging with the primordial chaos, a merging with the void, a merging with the dark mother, the dark feminine, that births everything into existence so that you can reshape the holographic reality that is the projection from the unconscious, okay, that is the projection from the dark matter. And that's what the Necronomicon is. That's what the Qliphoth is, okay, a symbolic structure that can help you access various planes of existence on the astral level, open gateways within your psyche so that you can then merge with your most primordial self and then influence the shaping of the collective reality and starting with your own individual reality on the microcosmic level. Okay, so the Necronomicon, seeing as it's becoming more and more solid, the structure of it is becoming more and more solid, the more people hear about it and know about it, particularly from its initiatory perspective. What that is doing is that it is bringing reality, closer to its shadow, okay, bringing the collective closer to its shadow, and that in itself will cause more shadows to come to the surface, to be processed and integrated. That is the agenda of the primordial beings. Okay, that is the agenda of the call of Cthulhu. If you hear that call, okay, it's the call from your own primordial self. Okay, if you translate the call of Cthulhu, the call from the primordial beings in the Draconian tradition, you can see it as the call from the dragon. You are being called back to your own godhood. Okay, and the more people are called back to their own godhoods, okay, patriarchy will shatter and our reality will be shaped once again by the gods that existed before, which is us. Okay, all you are doing by interacting with the Necronomicon and these primordial beings and these symbolic astral structures is that you are creating a deeper connection with your own shadow self and your unconscious, and you are acknowledging that your unconscious mind is the projector of your reality. Okay, everything around you that you see in your physical, tangible experience is a projection from your unconscious mind, much like how our physical multiverse is a projection from the darker recesses of the primordial chaos, the pure infinity, the pure nothingness, but pure potential that existed before everything. Okay, so very, very powerful concept to explore. Okay, it's focused around shedding ignorance as well. Okay, letting go of the shells, letting go of the personas that have been detaching you from your full potential. Okay, acknowledging that patriarchy installs this false idea of knowing, okay, these extremely dense collective and individual illusions of grandeur that make us believe that we know our full potential, when in reality our full potential is primordial in nature, okay, it is void in nature, which means it's too infinite to place into a box. And when you really realize that on a deeper level by interacting with these currents of energy, you realize that most of our reality and most of our multiverse, in terms of the programming that we have received, has been built specifically to keep us separated from our full power and potential. So the purpose of interacting with these beings is to return to the goddess, return to the feminine space, and really realize your full potential as a human being, understanding that that full potential cannot be defined by illusions of knowing who you actually are. Okay, so to elaborate on that more, I'm going to read a section from Donald Tyson's Necronomicon, The Wanderings of Alhazred. You who would learn the wisdom of hidden things and traverse the avenues of shadow beneath the stars, heed this song of pain that was chanted by one who went unseen before you, that you may follow the singing of his voice across the wind-blown sands that obscure the marks of his feet. Each who goes into the empty space walks alone, but where one has gone, another may follow. Turn not your mind from night fears, but embrace them as a lover. Let terror possess your body and course through your veins with its heady intoxication to steal your judgment, your very reason. In the madness of the night, all sounds become articulate. A man sure of himself, confident in his strength, aware of his rightful place, remains forever ignorant. His mind is closed. He cannot learn in life, and after death there is no acquisition of knowledge, only unending certainty. His highest fulfillment is to be food for the things that burrow and squirm, for in their mindless hunger they are pure, undefiled by reason, and the purity elevates them above the petrifying pride of our race. By writing on your belly in abject terror, you will rise up in awareness of truth. By the screams that fill the throat unsought is the mind purged of the corruption of faith. Believe in nothing. There is no purpose in birth, no salvation of the soul in life, no reward after death. Abandon hope and you shall become free, and with freedom acquire emptiness. The night things that hop and skitter and flit at the edges of the campfire glow only to teach, but no man can understand their words unless he has lost in fear the memory of his name. 2 serving maidens will come to you when you lie alone, and will lead you to the place within yourself that cannot be known but only felt. These handmaidens are terror and despair. Let them guide you into nightmares that follow one upon the other, like wind-blown grains of sand, until they cover over the markers of your mind. When you have lost yourself in the wasteland of unending nothingness, the night things will come. With hope utterly abandoned, all else will leave you, save only fear. Your name forgotten, your memories bereft of meaning, without desire or purpose and having no regret, you would cease utterly to exist and would become one with the greatness of the night were it not for fear. Let your terror be your standing place amid the ocean of darkness. From it you cannot retreat, for it is all that you are become. Pure fear is undifferentiated, a smoothness without line or colour. Hence a man in the extremity of terror is united with all other terrified men. More than this, in the purity of terror he becomes one with all fearful creatures in this world or other worlds, both in this moment and in distant eons of time, and in that unity wherein dwells the wisdom of all, his mind is opened and the night things speak. Pain is the terror of the body, and as the body is but a pallid reflection of the mind, so is the pain of the flesh no more than a distant echo of the terror of dreams. Even so, do not despise your pain, for it has its function. Pain anchors the mind to flesh. In the absence of pain, the mind would fly up and become lost in the spaces between the stars, and darkness would consume it. Just as the mind can lose all aspects of itself, but will never cease to fear, so can the body lose all strength and sensations or longing, but will always feel pain. While there is life, there is pain, and fear continues even when life is no more. Despair is not separate from terror, but is the consequence of the abatement of fear. When terror fills the mind, there is room for nothing else. But when it withdraws in part, as it must do, for it ebbs and flows even as the tides of the sea, then the mind is left cleansed and empty. And this condition is called despair. In despair, there is a void that yearns to be filled up. Let the night things fill it with their whisperings, and in this way grow wise in the secret ways of this world and other worlds unknown to men. So what I just read is a very important thing to note in terms of the purpose of working with the Necronomicon, okay? And that is the dissolution of the illusion, okay? The dissolution of the layers of the ego that are no longer serving you, okay? And shattering the illusion of slavery and the illusion of knowing, okay? To work with the Necronomicon is to acknowledge the fact that you have been living a life whereby the wool has been pulled over your eyes, the veil has been very much pulled over you in order to keep you safe and imprisoned, okay? Keep you safe from things that are not safe to feel, that you learned from your early childhood trauma that is not safe to feel, as well as keeping you imprisoned and a slave to society as a whole. Okay, so if we look at the symbolism of that, okay, you who would learn the wisdom of hidden things and traverse the avenues of shadow beneath the stars, heed this song of pain that was chanted by one who went unseen before, that you may follow the singing of his voice across the wind-blown sands that obscure the marks of his feet. Each who goes into the empty space walks alone, but where one has gone, another may follow. It's basically going against the grain, okay? Being willing to go into the unexplored portions of yourself, because once you go in there, you cannot go back, okay? It's an irreversible process of alchemy and metamorphosis that happens when you delve into the shadow on this level. The important part of this is a man sure of himself, confident in his strength, aware of his rightful place, remains forever ignorant. His mind is closed, he cannot learn in life, and after death there is no acquisition of knowledge, but only unending certainty. Okay, so it's showing you there the illusion of knowing. Okay, the illusion that patriarchy has hammered into all of us is that once we get here, then it's fine. Okay, once we've got to this point, then we know ourselves. And a lot of the New Age spiritual community is still very much operating from that very clear space of separation. Okay, from, you know, needing to acquire this knowledge, and then once we've acquired this knowledge, then this is who I am. Okay, not knowing that who you are is purely infinite and by nature is primordial, because you came from the dark womb. Okay, you were birthed from the darkness, the dark realm of primordial chaos, to define a meaning for yourself within this holographic light matter multiverse. Okay, so if you continue to go with the grain, yeah, to do what is easy as opposed to what is right for you, then there is no real evolution in that. Okay, don't get me wrong, there is evolution in everything. Okay, and you know, there is evolution by simply being in this world. Okay, but to explore the Necronomicon is to break out of the illusionary cycles of certainty, and knowing that certainty as a whole is an imprisoning concept, and the uncertainty and the unknown is the space of pure potential. Okay, if we lived in a world where everything is certain, Okay, some people believe that everything is certain, but nothing around you is certain. Nothing in the collective world around you has a set definitive meaning, and there is not a set ending to a particular story. Okay, we are dreaming that reality into being at every moment. Our unconscious mind, individually and collectively, is constantly projecting that holographic projection into the world around us to cultivate the reality around us. Okay, so the exploration of the Necronomicon gnosis and current is to actually be honest with yourself around the concept of certainty, and where are you using your life experiences as a reason to hide from further evolution. Okay, and this in itself is a pretty ego shattering concept. Okay, his highest fulfillment is to be food for the things that burrow and squirm. For their mindless hunger, they are pure, undefiled by reason, and their purity elevates them above the petrifying pride of our race. So basically, if we attach to certainty, it's basically saying that our highest fulfillment is to be the food for what dwells within the shadows, which is represented by the things that burrow and squirm. The things that burrow and squirm are the things that we have hidden that actually have a power over us from within the unconscious mind. So unless we choose to consciously look these things in the eye and integrate them, then we are going to be food for them. Okay, and they're going to run the show from the unconscious without us actually realizing it. Okay, and their purity elevates them above the petrifying pride of our race, acknowledging the illusion of pride, okay, acknowledging that humanity has learnt to find comfort, okay, find comfort within a place of disempowerment and shame, and neglecting its own godhood. So to work with the Necronomicon is to be freed by petrifying pride. Okay, what it's implying here is that what we have learned to see as safe in many cases is actually not safe at all, and it's actually a state of disempowerment which is designed to keep us separate from our full power and potential. Okay, this is pretty defining stuff. Okay, so this is the section around the void. Okay, by writing on your belly in abject terror, you will rise up in awareness of truth. By the screams that fill the throat unsought is the mind purged of the corruption of faith. Believe in nothing. There is no purpose in birth, no salvation of the soul in life, no reward after death. Abandon hope and you shall become free, and with freedom acquire emptiness. Okay, the dark matter is pure potential. Okay, the Necronomicon is a symbolic structure that gives astral form to something that simply does not have a form. Okay, so what it's saying is that we all come from emptiness. We all come from nothingness. So basically the process of returning to the goddess, returning to the darkness, is the process of returning to that pure state of emptiness. Okay, and from within that emptiness, new realities can be established. It's basically saying that we need to let go of those attachments in order to embrace our pure potential. In other words, we have to allow ourselves to become the ash before we can become the phoenix that rises from the ash. Okay, we need to allow the illusion to dissolve first before we try and create a new reality. And many people don't realize that. Okay, in many occult initiation, when it comes to the darker aspects of the occult, there are deep explorations of the abyssal realms, the void-like space, the liminal planes that sort of existed before everything. Okay, and the Necronomicon is a direct exploration into those deep aspects of the self and the cosmos. Okay, and when you enter them, you are met by pure meaninglessness. Okay, and you have to embrace pure meaninglessness, becoming nothing to then become everything. It's like a paradox. Yeah, you have to become nothing once you accept that you are nothing and that you have no power or potential, you accept that because that is the void, you are then opening yourself up to the paradox. Okay, the void is a paradox. It's nothing. Okay, but it's also pure potential at the same time. So when you are embracing no hope, yeah, you are allowing that no hope, that pure dissolution, that nothingness to set you free to rebuild in a way that is truly authentic to you. Okay. So, with hope utterly abandoned, all else will leave you, save only fear. Your name forgotten, your memories bereft of meaning, without desire or purpose, and having no regret, you would cease utterly to exist and would become one with the greatness of the night, were it not for fear. Let your terror be your standing place amid the ocean of darkness. From it you cannot retreat, for it is all that you are become. Pure fear is undifferentiated, a smoothness without line or colour. Hence, a man in the extremity of terror is united with all other terrified men. More than this, in the purity of terror, he becomes one with all fearful creatures in this world or other worlds, both in this moment and in distant eons of time, and in that unity wherein dwells the wisdom of all, his mind is opened, and the night things speak. So this is pure shadow integration. Okay, pure shadow integration by using fear as the guidance system. Okay, it's showing you that what we have been made to believe around human emotions it's far more complex than that. Okay, it's not as simple as like, oh, you're feeling happy, so that's good, or you've got a high vibration, so that's good. In that respect, there is huge amounts of medicine in the darker feelings that we have learnt do not have a place in the world. Okay, so how we are wired to think and feel and approach fear is to actually reject it. Okay, and what we're doing is that we are rejecting the inner child that is feeling scared about a particular endeavor or whatever we are doing to actually that is actually evoking the fear specifically. So from it, you cannot retreat, for it is all that you are become. Okay, let your terror be your standing place amid the ocean of darkness. Okay, pure fear is undifferentiated, a smoothness without line or colour. Hence, a man in the extremity of terror is united with all other terrified men. Okay, so it's showing you the unity and the integration of the different aspects of you. All other terrified men is not just referring to the external world and the external retrieval or the collective retrieval of identity, but is the retrieval of the different aspects of your psyche that have been lost and frozen in the darkness because they've been refused from our society and made to believe that they simply do not have a place in our world. It's showing you that the darker feelings that you have been rejecting and that society rejects and frowns upon are actually your guidance system, are actually your way into your full potential. Okay. Where am I looking? So, in this moment and in distant eons of time, and in that unity wherein dwells the wisdom of all, his mind is opened and the night things speak. Okay, the pure integration of the shadow. Okay, when you're following, your fear and using it as a guidance system, not trying to reject it. If you reject it, it will always be playing out in the unconscious mind, as we identified within the last chapter in that respect, in terms of humanity, or the last section, in terms of humanity being a slave to their own emotions and their own certainty and their repressed aspects. Okay, the fear is what is represented in the last section by his fulfillment is to be the food for the things that burrow and squirm. Okay, so basically, unless you face your fear, then your fear is always going to rule you from the unconscious. Whereas if you integrate your fear and you integrate the emotions that have been rejected and frowned upon, then you can integrate them into your being and actually help to help them to work in your favor instead of against you, is basically what it's saying here. Okay. Pain is the terror of the body, and as the body is but a pallid reflection of the mind, so is the pain of the flesh no more than a distant echo of the terror of dreams. Even so, do not despise your pain, for it has its function. Pain anchors the mind to the flesh. In the absence of pain, the mind would fly up and become lost in the spaces between the stars, and darkness would consume it. So it's showing you that without pain, there is no evolution. Okay. And with pain being the most suppressed feeling in the body, without us going through pain, we would not be able to open ourselves up to the evolution that our soul is actually wanting. And often meaning is actually drawn through paradox. As we've seen from the fear is actually a guidance system when it's integrated, whereas pain stops being something that you are avoiding, but something that you embrace. Okay, something that you embrace as a pure guidance into your own deep psyche and a pure exploration into the things that you have hidden. Okay, what it's saying here is to befriend the most repressed feeling in the body, and that is pain. Okay, so the interesting part. Okay, when terror fills the mind, there is no room for anything else. But when it withdraws in part, as it must do, for it ebbs and flows even as the tides of the sea, then the mind is left cleansed and empty, and this condition is called despair. In despair, there is a void that yearns to be filled up. Let the night things fill it with their whisperings, and in this way grow wise in the secret ways of the world and other worlds unknown to men. Okay, so what it's saying is that the Necronomicon is the unexplored portions of the collective. So when you're exploring the void, you are exploring the sort of the recycling zone of society, the recycling zone of humanity is what you're exploring when you tap into the void. Okay, and it's showing you that the void is despair. Okay, and in despair, there is a void that yearns to be filled. Okay, so once you surrender and allow the repressed feelings and emotions that are stuck within that void space, within the collective unconscious, within the city of the Necronomicon to come to the surface, then the night things fill it with whisperings, and in this way grow wise in the secrets of this world and the other worlds unknown to men. Okay, so the other worlds unknown to men is symbolic of the things that mankind has chosen not to explore. Okay, so the Necronomicon is very much about dissolution. Okay, the dissolution of the old self. When you're working with these primordial forces, you're working with forces that are older than the demons, and you could even say older than the Kabbalah. But again, in terms of what's older, it depends. Yeah, they're all, at the end of the day, they're all structures. The Kabbalah is a structure. The Necronomicon city is a structure to help you to comprehend your deep psyche and explore the hidden archetypes within the collective unconscious. Okay, so very, very potent initiatory system that requires you to shed your roles, shed the illusions of certainty, let go of any illusion of knowing, release your illusions of grandeur, and find your full potential from within the depths of the void. For that is where you come from, and your pure potential is void. Infinite potential, no meaning, just infinite potential, trying to recover its meaning that it was separated from within this physical body. So let's explore some of the beings that dwell within this current. Going to be looking specifically at the great old ones and the ancient ones, not going to go through all of them, but really understanding how these different types of beings, the great old ones and the ancient ones, are all about the balance of order and chaos and how it relates to different aspects of Sumerian mythology and the deep psyche. In the sacred text titled Bereshit, signifying the beginning of all things in the tongue of the Jews, we are taught that the Holy One created the world in 6 days, and on the 7th rested from his travail. Before he began, there was nothing, And when he completed his work, all that we know was perfected, all stars of the heavens, all forms of plant and beast, all seas and mountains and plains, and the most noble pattern, Adam, the first man, more beautiful than the angels, since his face mirrors the face of God. Our race was formed at the end of the sixth day. The final thing made the Creator to be the Lord and ruler of every lesser creature of the spaces of this world. So it is written, and men who are devout believers accept it as the sacred word of God. But a few among our race who are uncontent to receive teachings as an infant receives its milks, but must restlessly seek them out where they lie hidden. Know that on the spaces between the days, other creatures were made by other makers, and since they were made at night, they have remained unseen and veiled in shadow. Neither may it be presumed that our race is the most ancient or last of the masters who rule this world, or that the aggregation of living forms known to man walks unaccompanied. The old ones were, the old ones are, and the old ones shall be. They walk not on the places we know, but between them, tranquil and primal, by us unseen, for they are formless. Yog-Sothoth remembers the gate. Yog-Sothoth is the gate. Yog-Sothoth is the key and protector of the gate. What was and shall be are one in Yog-Sothoth. He remembers where once the old ones broke through the vault that separates our sphere from the outer darkness, and where they shall break through again. He remembers where they left the imprint of their feet in the mud of the earth, and those places where they still walk to and fro, and why no one can behold them as they pass. By their odour can men sometimes know their presence, but of their semblance no man can know, but only indirectly by peering into the lineaments and expressions of those they mingled with mankind, and of those there are many types varying in appearance from the mirror of man to the shadow outline of that invisible and formless presence that made them. They walk unseen and reeking in desert places, where the worlds have been intoned and the rites howled through at their proper times. The wind gibbers with their voices, and the earth rumbles with their thoughts. They bend the trees and crush the cities, yet neither forest nor city beholds the hand that strikes. At their return, all men shall bow their heads and serve them as lords. Those few who remember their ancient presence with invocations and offerings given at their places of power shall command the mass of our race, who bleat as sheep and low as cattle when they are led to the slaughter. For we are food to them, and as beasts of burden that toil in the fields. The prayers of the prophets shall not prevail against them, neither crescent nor cross nor star can forestall their approach. When once again the heavens align and the gate is opened, Ya Nyarlathotep, they shall visit us in darkness, but their fires the night will be made flashing with the brightness of polished brass set against the face of the sun. 7 are the lords of the old ones, 6 who are as brothers and sisters, and 7th who is to them as the son of a father's brother, and who stands apart although he is one with them. The names of others of their race are whispered in the deep caverns, but the others have not the same family blood, and these 7 are the leaders or heralds in our world. Among the 7 are those better known as those obscure, for not all the old ones interest themselves equally in the affairs of this world. Their names are Azathoth, Dagon, Nyarlathotep, Yig, Shub-Niggurath, Yog-Sothoth, and the 7th who stands apart, Cthulhu. So the Great Old Ones are referred to specifically as the primordial beings that existed before. Okay, people get them confused with the Ancient Ones, but it's quite a big mistake to make when you're confusing them. Okay, within the Necronomicon universe, there are forces of order and forces of chaos, and many grimoires, including the Simon Necronomicon, does kind of, if you don't read between the lines, can very easily pull you into this sort of ongoing beef between these two pantheons. Okay. And this ongoing beef or battle, however you want to refer to it, is simply the battle between the great old ones, which I just described with what I just read, and the ancient ones. Okay, the difference is that the ancient ones are the forces of cosmic order. Okay, you can draw similarities between them and the earlier gods that would later become the Anunnaki, referring specifically to the beings of the Enuma Elish, referring specifically to beings like Enki and Marduk. Okay, so Enki and Marduk could very easily be classed as the ancient ones because they represent the forces of cosmic order from the chaos, whereas the great old ones could be described as Kingu and Tiamat, the primordial dragons that battled Enki and Marduk and the forces of the younger gods. Okay, so what we are really referring to here are the forces of order and chaos. When you're exploring the Simon Necronomicon, it's the process of essentially shifting yourself into resonance with the early Anunnaki gods through the chants of the 50 names of Marduk and other practices that exist within here, including the invocation of the personal watcher, in order to safely explore the 7 planetary gateways. Okay, and these 7 planetary gateways are shown within many ancient initiatory systems. The Simon Necronomicon describes them in their own way. In this book that I just read, the Necronomicon, The Wanderings of Alhazred by Donald Tyson, it describes the 7 planetary gateways as aligning with the 7 core lords of the Great Old Ones, which I listed before, which is Azathoth, Dagon, Nyarlathotep, Yig, Shub-Niggurath, Yog-Sothoth, and Cthulhu. Okay, so it's like it describes the 7 planetary gateways in a different way to what the Simon Necronomicon does. Okay, so the Great Old Ones are referring specifically to the primordial gods, and you can draw similarities between the Great Old Ones represented by beings like Nyarlathotep, Azathoth, Cthulhu, and you can draw similarities between them and the forces of Tiamat. Okay, there's a lot of crossover when we look into the occult sciences. There's a lot of crossover between Sumerian mythology and the Lovecraft's sort of Necronomicon universe. Okay, and a lot of the initiatory systems do actually work with both the Anunnaki lords, such as, or the early Anunnaki lords, such as Marduk and Enki, to be able to safely explore and integrate the primordial forces that dwell within the 7 core planetary gateways that is introduced by different Necronomicon systems, but the most well-known being the famous Necronomicon by Simon. Okay, so the ancient ones, the forces of cosmic order. Okay, the great old ones, the forces of primordial chaos. Okay, so to get them confused is quite a big mistake. It's very easy to get them confused. Sometimes I muddle them up myself. Okay, so if you compare it to the Babylonian myth of creation, the famous Enuma Elish, where the forces of Marduk take on the forces of Tiamat, Kingu, and Absu, or Absu would have previously been assassinated by Enki, then you can draw similarities between the two traditions quite easily. Okay, and what it's all really referring to is the repression of primordial chaos in order to bring about cosmic order. Okay, the forces of Enki and Marduk would have later become the Anunnaki gods, and the Tiamat Kingu, Absu, the primordial forces of nature, are represented by or representative of the forces of the great old ones if you are to draw them together. Okay, so the great old ones are the primordial beings, the primordial chaos, and the ancient ones are the forces of cosmic order. So when it comes to the great old ones and understanding their function and symbolism in what I just described, this section of the book that I just read out starts with describing the more patriarchal view of reality, of there being one God and creator that created the world in 6 days and then rested on the 7th day, and then goes into the real primordial gods that existed long before that creation myth. Okay, and that is represented by, or representative, I keep getting those words mixed up, by the great old ones. Okay, the story goes that the great old ones are waiting for their time to rule the earth again. And again, this is symbolic. Okay, particularly the part here where it says, "At their return, all men shall bow their heads and serve them as lords. Those few who remember their ancient presence with invocations and offerings given at their places of power shall command the mass of our race, who bleat as sheep and low as cattle when they are led to the slaughter, for we are as food to them as beasts of burden that toil in the fields." So what that is really focused towards, or what that's really sort of referencing, is the slavery of our society. Okay, the disempowerment of our society, and how the primordial gods will symbolically rise again to basically take back power over the world. So what that is associated with is full human potential. Yeah, the primordial gods are mirrored, or they basically mirror the internal God. Okay, the repressed godhood that was left outside when we came into this physical incarnation, into this physical avatar, and the godhood that was gradually fragmented and dissociated from when we went through trauma. So the process of merging with the great old ones is the process of merging with your true godhood, and you're basically allowing the slaves of patriarchy, which is symbolic of your false self, the false light, the false sense of security, the false comfort, the coping mechanisms, to fall away, whilst your true self, your true primordial self, then takes control of this physical avatar. Okay, and that has to happen on the individual level in order for that to then spread to the collective level. Okay, it's basically referring to the collective power retrieval process that takes place when you start to interact with the Necronomicon current. Okay, the whole purpose of it is to explore the primordial chaos, to merge with the primordial chaos, to understand your own godhood, and allow your pure primal self to rise once again, take control of this physical avatar, and start to shape it in a way that is true and authentic. Okay, the Necronomicon is an incredibly deep initiatory path that is, I just want to reiterate here, as real as you make it. Okay, if you want to see it as a fiction, that's exactly what it will be. But if you want to see it as a gateway and all of this as symbolism to access different portions within your psyche and to tap into hidden power zones that are both within your unconscious and the cosmos, then that is exactly what it will be. But you must exercise caution when exploring the Necronomicon gnosis. Okay, these are extremely chaotic forces. They're not forces that you want to go interacting with when you haven't got any prior experience with working with primordial beings. Okay, again, as I mentioned earlier in the video, it's not 100% necessary or required to do any work before prior work before stepping into the Necronomicon gnosis, but these beings are pretty high level, they're pretty chaotic, and they can be very difficult to ground if you don't have a necessary foundation. Okay, the core foundation, even if you haven't interacted with these beings before, or similar beings is a foundation of genuine shadow integration and inner child work. Genuine shadow integration from the perspective of understanding the concept of the collective unconscious, understanding the concept of the deep psyche, and how all of this is within. Okay, the biggest mistake that people make with these deeper occult sciences is viewing these beings as entirely separate to them. Okay, when you're exploring these realms, you are exploring beings that have their own consciousness, that are older than you know, but mirror deeper portions of yourself that you need to process and integrate. And it's this illusion of separation that can cause a lot of people to get themselves into trouble with these different currents of energy. Okay, so it's also about it's also about understanding that it doesn't really matter, and there's many people who are going to disagree with me on this. It doesn't really matter what Necronomicon you work with. Okay, there are going to be some people who are like, you have to work with the Simon Necronomicon. That's the only real, genuine Necronomicon. Okay. Yes, it's powerful. It's extremely powerful. Just reading the book will expose you to the energies, even without doing any of the rituals. But it's not the only way. Okay, again, this is a very cryptic version of the Necronomicon, very powerful, but incredibly cryptic. I mean, some of it I feel you have to be a rocket scientist to actually figure it out. But there are other books that kind of elaborate on this further. Um, there is a specific one from Joshua Free that elaborates on the specific gates in here. It's not the same, it's kind of like a modernized version. Yeah, so it's like what you'll find is that it's hard to find concrete information because of how intangible the Necronomicon really is. You know, it's very easy to go into it searching for something tangible, but even that is completely contradictory. Okay, so on one hand, you'll have the Simon Necronomicon. On the other hand, you could have this Necronomicon by Donald Tyson, which definitely is much clearer and easier to understand. And then you've got these 13 gates of the Necronomicon that I read from before, which has a very powerful initiatory system through the 13 zodiac gateways, which is extremely powerful in itself. Okay, so it matters less which version you work with, but do take your time with it. Don't go jumping straight into the gate walking rituals. Don't go straight into initiation. You know, start to interact with intelligences of the great old ones. You know, Arzathoth is a good one to start interacting with. Nyarlathotep is kind of like a gateway spirit. So really starting conscious work, even if it's not through invocation, but in just kind of meditating on the current of energy, you know, you'll start to be exposed to the Necronomicon current. It is very expansive. It is very chaotic. And it does have similarities to Kabbalistic workings through the Qliphothic tree. It does have similarities to working with the abyssal energies of the Qliphoth as well, in that respect. All of it is just different ways of getting to the same place. Okay, there are going to be some who favor the Necronomicon over the Qliphoth. Okay, there are going to be some, such as myself, who kind of view the Qliphoth as another Necronomicon, just working with a different pantheon. You know, at the end of the day, you're working with shadow archetypes to help you integrate different aspects of yourself. And the way that you do that is really going to depend on you specifically. So understand that it is not a concrete system. Okay, yes, there are initiatory systems out there through the Simon Necronomicon, through the 13 gates of the Necronomicon, but you know, there are other ways that you can access this current of energy. You can access the current of energy just by reading about it, and what you will find is that there will be a bit of conflicting information. You know, some are gonna really be referring to, you know, the mad Arab Abdul al-Hazred, you know, really referring to him, whereas other sources are going to completely deny his existence altogether. You know, the whole Necronomicon area is kind of just this sort of soup of different pieces of information that some people have channeled, some people have read, but ultimately your own personal gnosis is what really matters here. Yeah, it's the same with anything, but especially with the Necronomicon, your own personal gnosis is what is really going to define the experience, because at the end of the day, the Necronomicon is you. Okay, the hidden cities of the Necronomicon is you. The Black Earth is you. It is your deep psyche. So it is your own personal gnosis which is really going to define it. And these books are just gateways, okay, ways of opening different portions of yourself, ways of accessing different portions of your psyche so that you can attempt to define a structure within a plane that does not hold any definitive structure. Okay, so very powerful concept and system to work with. Okay, it's hard to cover, to think, oh, have I covered it all? But it's impossible to cover it all with something like this. You know, it's like, you know, you can go into the different types of intelligences that are found within the Necronomicon mythos, but it would be too much for a single video, realistically speaking. You know, it's not tangible and is shaped by your own personal gnosis and experience more so than anything else. Okay, so approach it as your own inner underworld, your own internal structure that you are using to get to know yourself better and integrate some of the deeper aspects of yourself that you have rejected and ultimately take ownership of your own divinity. Okay, so I think that is everything that I needed to speak about in today's video. If this video was helpful to you, definitely hit like and subscribe. Definitely check out my membership programs in the first and second links of the description of this video. But for now, thank you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.